All right, joining me via Zoom. Very excited to have this gentleman on the show. Coach Sean Miller, formerly of Arizona, now with the Field of 68 podcast network. Coach, I hate to say it, I've certainly talked about you a lot on this show, but it's a privilege to talk to you. There's been a lot out there about you, your career, you're this, you're that, but now you're in the media, Arizona. I'm really excited to speak with you. I hope you're doing well. I hope everybody around you is doing well.
I am, Aaron. I'm doing well, and probably like every sports fan in the country, just was captivated watching the Super Bowl, and me being at Xavier for 8 years, living in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh,
Ironically, I just went back there previous to the Super Bowl for the first time in a long, long time, and just to see what the Bengals. How they captivated that city, and it was an exciting weekend in sports. It's actually a downer because you get so enthralled in watching the NFL that you just kind of say to yourself, okay, I guess it's college basketball and March Madness up next.
So Sean Miller is like everybody else. The day after the Super Bowl ends, you kind of wake up and you say, I love college basketball, but I'm going to miss football these next 8 months. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, Aaron, there's so many differences when you work as a college basketball coach. You're in charge of your team. It's much bigger than just coaching in the games, and you almost block out a huge portion of the sports world simply because you don't have time, and at least for me, you're so engaged in your own sport that when you have free time, it's almost like you don't want to deal with sports, right?
Sure.
But when you don't have a team, you become, I think, more of a general sports fan. I love the Steelers growing up in Pittsburgh, but I watched probably more NFL this year in my life than maybe I have in the previous 30. I mean, it just, you just look forward to Sunday, and then what you realize about the NFL, they kind of have about 4 days of the week, now, but it was a great season, and I enjoyed it.
I always say, as someone who recently started my own business, and the Super Bowl is in Los Angeles this year, so to see all the fan festivities and everything that goes on, like I respect the NFL as a business more than anything else. With, like you said, the way that
Sure.
they captivate the entire nation. Real quick before we get to basketball, I mean, who's Sean Miller's favorite player to watch on Sunday, Monday, Thursday? I know you're a Steelers guy, but are you like a Josh Allen guy, a Mahomes guy, a Joe Burrow guy? I mean, who you got?
Man, I love a lot of guys. I love a lot of them. I really do love the NFL. I mean, I'm driven by the Pittsburgh Steelers. When you grow up, I grew up elementary school in the 70s, coming all the way through junior high and high school in the 80s. I mean, you think about those 20 years, you talk about Hall of Fame players and teams, and Super Bowls. The Pittsburgh Steelers were, if they're not out on the top, they were right there seemingly every year,
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite player at the moment, I'll go with TJ Watt. I mean, the defensive player of the year. And then, look back to Pittsburgh, Aaron Donald, who went to Pitt, which I did, and Penn Hills High School. And just to watch him, grow up in Western Pennsylvania, go to Pitt, somewhat unheralded, and man, become kind of Lawrence Taylor-like, right? I mean, like maybe the most dominant player in the NFL, and just watching him win the Super Bowl. So I'm a fan of this year, I would say, especially TJ Watt and Aaron Donald.
Well, and I'd say too, like as a guy who's recruited athletes for, as you said, the better part of 30, 35 years or whatever, I feel like you got to have an appreciation for a guy like Aaron Donald that doesn't fit the measurables. In basketball, you want your guards to be 6'4", 6'5", your wings to be 6'8", 6. I mean, Aaron Donald's like a 5'11", 6-foot dude that didn't fit any of those measurables coming out of high school. So I just feel like, as somebody that's in your space, I feel like you got to appreciate the story too,
No question. And if you follow Aaron Donald, he's given back to the University of Pittsburgh at a very young age, has really a performance center where, the players there can work out. He himself, I think, in the off season when he's home, works out there, and kind of reminds me of what Richard Jefferson did at Arizona. Richard Jefferson, before he was towards the end of his career, he really did it more towards the beginning of his professional career. He gave back in a huge way to the basketball program in Arizona, and consequently, the practice facilities named the Richard Jefferson Gym, and just, just to see his name on there, just watch the reaction of him towards players walking in that building with his name on it, and the impact that it's already made, but it'll make for the next 20 years. Just when you see players and people like Aaron Donald, Richard Jefferson kind of go through as a student athlete, right? Where they leave high school, they go to college, and then when they're in the NFL or NBA, they look back and just fondly give back. I know Steve Smith at Michigan State, Carmelo Anthony at Syracuse. It's like a gift that I don't think even in their best attempt that they really understand how deep the meaning is for generations after they leave.
Very good. Let's talk a little college hoops. First of all, I mentioned Field of 68. You're working with a good friend of mine, Rob Dowster, your brother, Archie, Jeff Goodman, who I just saw a few weeks ago when I was in Tucson. How are you enjoying, obviously I know you want to get back into coaching at some point, but how are you enjoying being on the other side? You're a media schlub like me and the rest of the guys and girls here. How have you enjoyed it so far?
Well, I just appreciate, Rob and Jeff really inviting, me and giving my brother an opportunity just to stay involved in the game. I'll tell you this, Aaron, again, back to, if you have your own team, you think you know everything about your own team. And by the way, you better because you're in charge, but you forget how little you pay attention to the rest of the world, even of college basketball, because what pertains to you is your team the next day, the next game, your schedule, right? The Pac-12, maybe the conference you're in. But if you'd ask me, hey, how's Florida doing? How is, Michigan playing right now? I mean, I have like a 360-degree view way, way far away. When you're doing what you do for a living and like being a part of the Field of 68, it makes you really on a daily basis be more aware. And I tell you, it's been very therapeutic for me because it's something I haven't done a lot of. But I would say I've probably watched more college basketball, more aware of teams, players this year than maybe I ever have been, simply because I don't have my own team. And I've enjoyed it. At night, I think the concept of the Field of 68 is a great concept, because it deals with the things that just happened. A lot of times you have the opportunity to talk to a coach or player that just finished winning a big game. And if you love college basketball, it's really a good site, I think, to click into.
You said something a coach always say when they're away from it is you learn. Like, what do you feel like, whether it's talking to a coach after a big game or watching more games or listening to other press conferences, or like, what do you feel like that you've learned that you're going to take with you when you get back into coaching?
Well, you're right. I've heard so many coaches tell me over the years that, if everybody could have a break or just kind of get away from what you were doing or the place you're at, that the perspective you would have would be a healthy one and much different. And I would say that really is the case for me. Sometimes, Aaron, it actually makes you feel stronger about certain things you did in fact to do.
Sure.
It's not always like something different, but what I enjoy is just watching the successful teams or programs, and in particular the coaches, go about coaching their team and learning from them. And there's quite a bit, I think, that just me, whether it's your approach to building a roster, your approach to how you play offense, maybe even your approach to how you go about practicing early in the year versus late in the year. There's so many different things that I think you learn from, watching and studying others without the pressure of having your own team at the same time. So I've enjoyed that. And again, back to the Field of 68 and just being aware of all of the conferences and the programs and teams simultaneous to that is it's been a lot of fun. Let me say this, it at least gives me something to do.
Well, so, one of the teams that we all kind of enjoy watching is obviously the Arizona Wildcats. And, I would love your perspective as a guy that has, frankly, personal relationships with just about everybody on the roster. One, with their success, but two, I would also ask you is that, how proud are you that the guys that you brought to this campus are, one, playing well, representing the school well, And that too, to be blunt, while things didn't work out, that you left the program in a great position. I mean, the one you can argue about any sort of number of different things. You cannot argue that Sean Miller left the cupboard full for whoever was going to be the next head coach. How proud of you? How proud are you about that element of the school's success, but then just in general, the team's success this year as well?
Well, first I would answer Aaron, Tommy Lloyd and his staff, which, there's a number of different people that were with me as well that are now with him. Jack Murphy, who had a big hand in the recruitment of a lot of the players that are on the current roster, both while I was the head coach and after I left. But, Tommy Lloyd has done a sensational job. Like, you have to tip your hat, and, being able to take over in a transition is hard. To establish credibility, even harder. To have immediate success, quite frankly, doesn't happen a lot of times. I do think he inherited a really good situation. And to answer your question about am I proud of it, very, very proud of what we did, because I would say, it was a 12-year window, which I was at Arizona, establishing in 2009, coming on the heels of some real uncertainty, getting the program back on its feet and then thriving. And then really kind of like a second reset of, some things happened, a number of things happened that weren't good in the fall of 2017. And can you rebound from it? Can you learn from it? Can you grow and get the program moving in the right direction? And, some of what you're witnessing this year, a way of recruiting, a way of doing things maybe differently, started as far back as 3 years ago. And I think just kind of watching some of the young people thrive and grow. And then again, they can thrive and grow all they want, but they need a direction of a great head coach and a staff. And they really have both. I think they have a talented roster, and I think they have a really unique and talented coaching staff. And, I think they're one of 6 to 8 teams that can win it all, Aaron. And I do think that, they'll be right there for a 1 seed and have a real chance of getting to a 5th Final Four in Arizona's history.
First of all, I said on my last episode, we're down to 5 teams that can win it all. So we will duke it out over number 6, 7, 8 in a minute. Real quick, I was going to say, first of all, and maybe it goes back to the proud element of it, but, you mentioned it, and I don't think people realize, we think of Arizona as this incredible program, as you said, 4 Final Fours prior to your arrival. But the program was going through a bit of turmoil and transition when you took over. That's no disrespect to anybody. It's just facts. People can look it up. I believe it was 3 different head coaches in the 3 years before you got there. As you look back just in general on the 12 years, obviously you wish things had ended different. You wish, obviously, you could have brought the school a 2nd national title, a 5th Final Four. But how proud of you? How proud are you in general? Because I don't think people, again, we think of the history of Arizona, the NBA players, but it wasn't an easy situation for you to walk into. And how I know that? Because I'm a UConn alum. And in 2011, your story when you faced UConn in Anaheim was one of the great stories of that college basketball season. So I didn't mean to bring up a bad memory from 2011, but in general, it just, I think it probably goes a little bit underappreciated, everything that you and all your staff and players accomplished during your time there.
Well, I think taking you back, Aaron, and again, I have a lot of time to think, right, and reflect. Part of the question you asked a minute ago is, what do you learn when you no longer in coaching? And look, I think anyone that is in this situation, you reflect back almost from the start. And number one, I was really fortunate to be the head coach at Xavier. I mean, incredibly fortunate. There aren't 20 places in America that support their basketball program better than Xavier University. It's always been in place. That's why seemingly every coach that coaches there is successful. And when we left Xavier, we were coming off of an Elite Eight. Ironically, we lost to Kevin Love and Russell Westbrook and Darren Collison. Ben Howland was the coach. And we lost in Phoenix, right?
Points, but
that following year, we finished up with a Sweet 16. And looking back on that, we had a tremendous team coming back. When I left Xavier that following year, they lost, I believe, in double overtime to Kansas State in the Sweet 16. and they were a team that could have made the Final Four. So, you have a lot of pride in kind of leaving a program and then coming to Arizona. When I came to Arizona, we knew that there was a rebuilding effort because of what you mentioned. And it's like a lot of different things happened. I will tell you this, that when USC made their change in the summer of 2009, if that change didn't happen, I'm not so sure I would have made it to year 4 as the head coach at Arizona. I really mean that, and I'm humble in my reasons for saying it. It was a tough climb. But getting Derek Williams, getting Solomon Hill, getting Momo Jones, and then continuing to recruit really bolstered us and gave us the opportunity to get both feet on the ground. And then once that happened, a lot of great things followed for sure. But thinking back, Derek Williams coming to Arizona in the time that he did was a big way of getting Arizona kind of out of maybe the spin cycle that it was headed down, and almost reviving it to be solid with new life again. And he alone, remember, he was the number 2 pick in the draft. And arguably in that season, in my mind, in the 17 years that I was a head coach, I never had a player have a better run offensively than Derek Williams did in that season. A great stat to back that up, Aaron. And I think if you're an Arizona fan, you probably remember it maybe more than the rest of the country. He almost broke Steve Kerr's single season 3-point shooting record.
Wow.
And that record is legendary.
Sure.
It's above 50, and it's historically one of the great single seasons ever recorded from 3-point shooting. And you think of Steve Kerr, right? One of the great shooters to ever play. Derek, I believe, if he made his last shot there against UConn, he would have been right there, like almost tied or in and around the same percentage of Steve. So you think about that, and you don't associate that with Derek's play, but Derek Williams was a real key component to Arizona's history.
Very good. Let's kind of start to look ahead here. Obviously things didn't end the way that you wanted, that anyone at Arizona wanted. And I've kind of already referenced for the audience before you came on that, frankly, it's incredibly 5 years in, I'll say it, is 5 years in, we still do not have a resolution. But is there anything that you can share in terms of an update where we are? I know there's a lot of things you can't, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, you, Arizona, anybody. But is there anything that you can share in terms, because I think Arizona fans, probably everybody's kind of ready to move on. I know you are as well.
Yeah, things this offseason 100% will come to a conclusion, Aaron. And once that conclusion is there, I think everybody, in fact, will be able to finally take the final deep breath and move on and look back and learn a lot from it. It's something that I regret almost every day. You try to, to your earlier question, learn from every circumstance, be better moving forward, and see good in everything. But for sure, and I'm most excited for Arizona to be able to, close that entire book. And I think that's what's great about Tommy Lloyd and his staff's initial success, that it really catapults them towards a great future.
Yeah, and I completely, knowing people all across the country, I think everybody's about ready to move on. Again, I know there's certain things that you can't talk about, but there's certain things that have already come out, either via trials, FBI related, whatever. And one reason that, I've always tried to, in my coverage of all this stuff is, one, listen, do I have access to certain people and coaches and administrators that maybe other people don't? I do. But there's also some stuff that's very public record wise, that other people can very easily access via this little thing called Google. And so I bring it up because, there's been a lot of things that have been said about you personally, your staff, your players, some successful players, some, whoever it is, that's simply factually incorrect. And I've always tried to, in my coverage, stick to facts, and I get stuff wrong. Some of the early coverage that I have of what happened with you guys at Arizona, I'm not proud of. The facts have proven me otherwise, but I've tried to correct myself. I've tried to, admit when I'm wrong. I do a segment every episode or every week on this show called Where Aaron Was Right, Where Aaron Was Wrong, where I talk about all the stuff that I get wrong throughout the course of a week or a month or a year. But one of the reasons I've always been sympathetic to Arizona, to you, to your former players, some of your assistant coaches, is that there's things out there that just aren't factually correct and have been proven not to be factually correct. How frustrating is it for you, for your former players, for your former coaches? I know you guys talk behind the scenes that there's some things that people think about Sean Miller, about certain former players that simply aren't true, that I think people kind of believe to this day. And how do you deal with it? How do you process it? I mean, I can't even imagine being in the public eye like that. And it's like I said, it's a reason I've always kind of tried to, if you want to call it fight for Arizona, I don't know if it's fight, but I just try to present the facts because I think a lot of people still at this point don't have a lot of basic facts correct.
Well, Aaron, that's why I believe in the next decade, you'll climb to the top of the mountain because I think you've always taken a measured approach. I think you've been patient. I think that you've really tried to see it for what it is, good or bad, and then as best you can with the information, the most information, give your opinion. And whether your opinion was shared by many or by few, you tried to deal in that arena, which I applaud you. And I think any coach, anybody who's kind of in it, you gravitate towards people in your industry that do their job like you do your job. And I mean that in the most complimentary way that I can. But look, a lot has happened. There are certain things that I could have done a lot better, certain things that all of us that were a part of this, September 2017 moment in time, wish that they could have gotten right or better. But what you try to do is just be patient in your own world, learn from it, move forward, and know that at the end of the day, the facts already have come out, but they will. And I think when everybody judges it, maybe it'll take as much as a decade to go by and look back on it. I think they'll see it for truly what it was, not, I don't even know the word, the hysteria that you want to just pile on certain people. And I think the one thing that I've learned when I'm going through it as a coach, or the many people that went through it, I'm not the only one. You deal with it on your own, right? How you're going to get through each day, each week, do your job to the best of your ability, move forward, be transparent, be honest, listen to the people that you really, really trust, right? But there's also like a group of people that live this life with you, your family, your wife, people that you've impacted, players, former players that really believe in you, that you have this shared experience with. And it's not quite as easy for them to do the same thing, or they may go about it a different way. And so at the end, when the dust settles and the damage is done, it's not done just to you. It's done to whoever has been on the journey with you. And I think when you then get to that point and you see that part of it, I think that's probably the hardest part to get over, because that hurts you more than even what you went through. Because one thing is you're in control of yourself, but you're not in control of the thoughts of those people that love you, that you love, that are with you. And again, time heals all wounds, and that's why it's so great about being on the field of 68 and just kind of following college basketball from my current vantage point. You asked me about Bill Self. It's fun to talk about him as a coach. It's fun to talk about Obagi as a player and how great the Big 12 is. That's to me what gets my juices flowing and what's great about sports. And I think some of the other things that happened, it is what it is. And now I think all of us are trying as best we can to move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But the appreciation of people like you that cover things through the lens that you cover them through is more appreciated than you realize, really.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Sometimes I think myself, like anybody, you wonder, are people, sometimes you just look at the facts, you say, why am I the only one seeing this? But it's actually ironic that you bring up the situation with your family. I was talking about this with the Brian Harsin situation at Auburn, where people were asking me, what should they do? And I said, you know, if you're Brian Harsin, it's like, I understand you want to fight for what's right, but it's not just him that has to deal with it. I mean, his wife, his children, I think his children are still like high school aged. And so there's a lot of crazy elements to a lot of this stuff that I think we think about the front facing person and we forget about all the people behind him. So I'm glad you shared that. In general, do you want to get back into coaching? I mean, obviously this has been your life. This has been your livelihood forever. And then what I would also ask is, you know, obviously, look, it's an ongoing investigation. You can't say certain things. I understand that. But, you know, Bruce Pearl was at Auburn. They were kind of caught up in, you know, similar allegations. They got their NCAA, you know, they finished their process, and Bruce Pearl just got a very lucrative contract. I love Bruce, Coach Pearl. I have nothing but respect for him. So this isn't a knock or a dig or anything. He's always been great to me. But, you know, he's obviously had a ton of success after this. Bill Self essentially has a 5-year rolling lifetime contract at Kansas. Do you want to get back into this? And if you do, I hate to say it, but you know, do you look around and say, okay, if those guys can get back on their feet, maybe it's a good situation for me too?
Yeah, we'll see. You know, one of the things that I'm trying to do is almost take it like not a day at a time, but just, you know, a week at a time, and trying to enjoy the things that I'm currently doing, to grow and learn, you know, one thing that really got me when all this happened as far back as last spring. I started playing basketball at a very early age, you know, son of a high school coach. And if I said, you know, I believe I started taking it seriously at 9 years old, you know, some people would laugh, you know, but that's just how I remember it, you know, playing at 9 years old, winning that game, being the best in the game, you know, thinking about one day uh, being a good high school player, playing in college, like that's when that journey started for me. So if you say that, okay, you're 52 years old when for the first time ever, you don't have a team, man, that's like 43 seasons in a row, you know, playing in college, high school, you know, as a young person, really playing basketball, not only because you love it, but because you have goals and dreams that also are attached with it. So to not have that, I would be missing a lot, not to try to do different things and see things in this period of time. So I believe that there'll come the next chapter for me, Aaron. And what I'll tell you is when that next time comes, not only will I be ready, but I'll be the best version that I've ever been. I just don't know when or where that'll be. And I'm really not waking up every day trying to be stressed about it, you know, because there's just a number of things you can't control. You know, for me, it's just to kind of enjoy the moment, grow, learn, and know that when my time it comes, that I'll be ready.
Well, best version of you, and it is worth repeating. 7 Sweet 16s, 4 Elite Eights. It's funny, like all these jobs are rumors and whatever. People ask me who are the candidates. I said, listen, if I was the AD and I have no say, I'm not an AD. Nobody's calling me up for. I go hire Sean Miller because somebody hired Bruce Pearl at some point. Looks really smart right now. So whatever. That's my opinion. You don't have to share it. Whatever. Real quick, kind of last pseudo question. Who do you enjoy watching? We'll get to your 6 to 8 teams in a minute, but who have you enjoyed as a fan watching the most, whether it's a coach, a style of play, a player, a team, whatever, as a now a fan and commentator of college basketball?
You know, I'm a big fan of Bill Self. I think he's the best who does it. You know, I think one of the things that is understated about him is everybody thinks he has, you know, 8, 9, 10 McDonald's All-Americans on his roster. In fact, he has 0 at the moment. And as the faces have changed, he's done it with great big guys. He's done it with terrific wing players. He's done it with a point guard who's elite. In this year's case, he's doing it without a point guard that's elite. And it's just Fog Allen Fieldhouse, the Big 12 Conference, Kansas basketball. You know, when you think of them, you just think of just this incredible success. And I really enjoy watching how he plays offense, defense. I would say the same about Mark Few and to the extension there, Tommy Lloyd. I think that the way that they play offense is a lot of fun to watch. I think it's today's version of what Dean Smith did at Carolina for decades, where fast break basketball, but incredibly efficient. Gonzaga mastered that. I think Arizona kind of is a version of that as well. And I enjoy watching that and just seeing it for what it is. And then the other thing is there's a ton of coaches right now who are up and coming or maybe aren't at their last stop that I think will be Final Four coaches. Nico Medved at Colorado State, Jeff Linder at Wyoming. I'm a huge fan of Randy Bennett, Tony Bennett as well, but Randy Bennett at St. Mary's. But Randy's been there for 21 years. And just to think of the success that he's had at little old St. Mary's, behind the curtain of Gonzaga to some extent, but just what he does with less, just an incredible coach. So you could see that I'm really scattered everywhere. This year, I don't think John Calipari gets enough credit. A year ago, he's the same guy that won 9 games that everybody talked about. The one and done way at Kentucky is outdated. He adjusted. He blended the right transfers with unique talent, like Ty Washington. But in terms of being a disciplined, well-coached, seasoned team, nobody right now is playing at a more efficient level than Kentucky. And they're doing it in a much better way in February than they would have in November, which again, I think is a real testament to his coaching. Like, judge him by the way his team played at Notre Dame. Judge him by the way his team's playing now. It's night and day. And, you talk about him, Ed Cooley at Providence, right? Winning close games, doing it in a place like Providence has never won a Big East regular season championship. And they've been in the Big East for a long, long time. And right now, tonight they play Villanova, which could mean the Big East regular season championship. So think about all the different coaches. They all have different styles. They all have different strengths. They have certain competitive advantages at the place they coach at. Yet I think you could really study and steal things from each of them. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy doing.
Okay, so what's the one thing, you don't have to name the coach of the school, what's the one thing you're going to steal for the next coaching opportunity that you have?
I think being even more efficient on offense, sometimes less is more. And by running less, I think you can play faster. And I think as you run less and play faster, you can still be efficient. I think along those lines, playing the right 7 or 8 players, as opposed to trying to get to that 9th guy. I think that in your best attempt as a coach to maybe get that 9th player some action or keep everybody happy, maybe you diminish your upside, so to speak, because you can really get into great team chemistry when that same group is playing start to finish, day in, day out, game in, game out. And the other thing, Aaron, that I believe in college basketball that's somewhat understated is playing with 2 point guards. And we were headed in that direction prior to the fall of 2017. And a big reason is Lorenzo Romar had joined our staff, and he talked to me a lot about the advantages of playing 2 point guards. There's so many. And if you study the Final Four and teams who go deep in March, it is incredible how many of those teams have, not necessarily 2 pure point guards, but maybe a combination guard and a pure point guard. Great example is Kentucky this year. And, so I know you asked me for one thing. I gave you kind of like 3 different things that I believe from an offensive perspective that would improve, me as a coach, or I think everybody's looking to get better. I'm no different.
Very good. Last one. All right. So I told you, I said on Monday, I don't mean to ruin the season for everybody else. I think we're down to 5 teams that can win it all. And I'll do them in alphabetical order so there's no favoritism here. 1, the Arizona Wildcats. 2, the Auburn Tigers. 3, the Duke Blue Devils. 4, Gonzaga Bulldogs. 5, Kentucky Wildcats. First of all, am I missing anyone from that? I think those are the only 5, because here's my stat that blows people away. And you may know this. every year.
Let me hold up. I don't want to interrupt you. You said Gonzaga, Arizona, Kentucky, 3,
Auburn, Duke.
Auburn, and Duke. Okay.
So the obvious ones that I'm not forgetting, but I'm not including Purdue, which we can get into, UCLA, which I actually think is like weirdly underrated, but they've lost 3 of 4 as we record here. Whatever. Illinois is one. Kansas, that was my preseason pick to win it all. Baylor would be another one. But the stat that I always share, which blows people's minds, is every year everybody says, "Oh, the tournament, it's so wide open, anybody can win it." Well, this stat is kind of crazy. Since 2007, there's been 14 NCAA tournaments played. Okay, 2020, there's no NCAA tournament. Of those 14 tournaments, 11 were won by number 1 seeds. One was won by Villanova as the top 2 seed, and then the other 2 were my 2011 UConn Huskies with the best player in college basketball, Kemba Walker. Maybe Derek Williams was right there that year, and 2014 UConn Shabazz Napier. So essentially, if you don't have either the best player in college basketball or aren't a number 1 seed, you're not winning the NCAA tournament. So everybody says it's so wide open, and oh my goodness, there could be 20. No, there could be 20 or 30 teams that make a Final Four. We could see a 7 seed make a Final Four. That's happened before. But to win it all, and people will argue with me on this, but the facts back it up. 6 seeds don't win the NCAA tournament. So do you believe that there's 1, 2, 3 teams that I'm obviously missing that can absolutely do it, and I'm just an idiot? You can call me an idiot. It's okay. I don't mind. I get called worse on social media all the time. So,
well, here's my perspective, and I would say that I've learned this. My brother and I have a podcast called Next Play, and it's part of the Field of 68. But we interviewed Ken Pomeroy, and okay. Ken Palm, that app I think is second to none. And they talk about college basketball efficiency. And we interviewed him about a week ago. And, there are a couple of things that I thought really jumped out at me. Number one, let's say the net, so to speak, that you cast is much wider when it comes to the number of teams that can actually make the Final Four. I think we're conditioned as fans sometimes to say, well, once you make the Final Four, it's like a brand new season, and any one of those 4 can win the national championship. Whereas I think if you look at it from an efficiency perspective, there aren't just 6 teams that can make the Final Four. There's 12, maybe it goes as far as 16, because one thing to keep in mind, Aaron, especially this year with an older version of college basketball, early round upsets don't make winning 4 games nearly as impossible for a lower seed. All it takes is one top seed in your division or in your bracket to get upset, right? But there are 16, 12, whatever, 15 teams that can get to the Final Four. I really believe that. Now, how many right now are at the end of on Selection Sunday can actually win a national championship? I agree with you, maybe 6 to 8. Before the big fella from Baylor got injured, I would put them in the group that you had. I think you have to consider it. And I would also consider Villanova and Kansas as part of that group. Just, you have to look at the conference they're playing in, how efficient they've been from early November all the way through, the number of quad 1 wins that they have going into the tournament. And just like the difference between them and maybe a couple of the teams that you mentioned, it's negligible, And the other part that he said, Aaron, that I really believe, great offense in the NCAA tournament beats great defense. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple of the teams where we would have been on the great side of defense and maybe very good on offense. And I look back and say, who that year won it, or who beat us, or what was the difference? It's just being able to score and being super, super efficient. It's harder to have an off day, and when you think of this year's field, Arizona jumps out at me. Kentucky and Gonzaga really jump out at me. Auburn jumps out at me. You're right in those 4 teams, but it'll be interesting. The last part is the injury. I mean, how many times, I remember when I was in Cincinnati, Bob Huggins had Kenyon Martin, and they were head and shoulders the number 1 team. similar to like a Gonzaga this year. And, their best player went down and they played that tournament without him. Well, that's a big difference in who's going to win the national championship. So hopefully those teams can stay healthy. But I don't know if I answered your question, but those are my educated thoughts on this year's tournament from trust me, a much different perspective than if I'm the coach at Arizona.
Well, no, and we'll wrap on that. I will say this. First of all, the only reason I don't have Baylor is because sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's your year, and they just have had one guy after the other. Weird injury. Yeah, man, it's sad. And your guy, James Akinjo, missed a few games and all that stuff. And then with Kansas, I'll just say this. I went through a little bit of this with football where I picked Georgia to win the national championship in the preseason. Then they get destroyed by Alabama. And so I picked Alabama to win the championship in the playoffs. So if I went on record with Kansas in October and then I come back and say they're done in February and they win it all, I'm going to be pissed. No disrespect to your guy, Bill Self there. But yeah, no, I think Kansas could probably do it in Villanova as well. All right, Sean Miller, Field of 68, what was Next Play podcast with Archie Miller.
Yeah.
And Coach, I genuinely appreciate the time. We covered a lot of ground. We know you love Aaron Donald. We know you love Bill Self, Nico Medved. Lot to take out of this, but I appreciate the time, and we'll continue these conversations. We'll do it again soon, okay?
My dark horse, Aaron, for the Final Four, I got two of them. So I've talked about the group. I'd say don't sleep on UCLA because of their unique style of play and their experience. I think Mick Cronin is a heck of a coach. And Purdue, because like we talked about, great offense beats great defense. And if you look at their offense, when you talk about great offense, Purdue might have the best as you enter the tournament.
Okay, so two nerdy questions I want to ask you before we finish recording here. We're still recording. So one is more of a statement than a question, but it's so funny what you say about offense. The year that Virginia was upset by UMBC, I remember talking to a coach the day that been to Final Fours, won national championships, the day after they lost. And he said, until they get more efficient on offense, which they did next year, you'll never win it. You can't win. If at a certain point, you're just going to get dragged into a game where you got to score in the 80s. And if you can't do that over 6 games, you're not going to win. Two, I wanted to ask you, so you said Purdue. It's not really a Purdue question. It's more of a in general question. I watch Auburn this year. And I think Walker Kessler is the most important player in college basketball outside of maybe Oscar Tshiebwe. But what stands out to me about all these teams is Arizona, Christian Coloco, Azuolas Tubelis, guys that you know well. Kentucky, Oscar Tshiebwe, Walker Kessler, Jabari Smith's kind of a perimeter-ish player. Purdue, you mentioned. Duke has Banchero and Williams. How great is it as a coach when you just have a guy that you can just dump it in we love, and we talk about 2-point guards and spacing and 3-point shooting, and everybody loves Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. How nice is it as a coach when you just got a dude that you can just dump the ball down low to, and it's just an automatic 2?
Well, Aaron, the other thing that Ken Pomeroy talked to me and my brother about on our podcast is, if you think about, what's the hardest part of single elimination tournament, like the NCAA tournament, what makes it March Madness is in that 40 minutes in that one shot deal, you have to be the better of the two teams, but if you'd say, what is the one statistic that is the hardest to lose from game to game? So that makes you the most consistent team in that type of format, and it's 2-point offense, 2-point percentage offense, your efficiency in scoring 2s, and guess what? Your efficiency in taking away 2s, your 2-point field goal defense, and how hard it is to be scored against from 2. It makes perfect sense if you think about it, right? Going from Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday, and having to win 6 games or 4 games to get to a Final Four against all these different styles on a neutral court. What is it that doesn't allow you to be upset? That's the most efficient thing that you can take from you from game to game to game to game. And it's what you said, to have those types of players. That's why, not that I'm betting on the tournament, but if I'm going to, pull out money to bet on March Madness, looking at 2-point field goal offense and defense might be the overall number one thing you look at. And it's why Walker Kessler, Auburn is a dangerous team, electrifying style of play. I think Jabari might be the overall best talent in college basketball, but you put him on the court with his shot blocking and then just his high efficiency scoring, it kind of takes Auburn to another level.
This
And
that we're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, back to Arizona, I know obviously Azuolas and Christian well, and then even the big fella that they bring off the bench. I mean, he's big. He's a big guy, from Gonzaga, and it's like you think about those three guys. What do they affect? 2-point field goal offense and defense. Gonzaga obviously speaks for itself. So those are the teams that I think you really look hard at. And I think to answer your question in a big way, point guard play, but do you have a rim protector and a guy can score it at the rim? Man, that's maybe the second biggest ingredient to look for.
There you go. On top of everything else, we now have bracket advice via Sean Miller. So, Coach Miller,
Yeah.
We appreciate the time. We will do it again soon. Thank you. And all the podcasts, Field of 68 Media. But thank you again for the time, Coach. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Aaron. Great to be on with you, and a heartfelt, really meant what I said about you earlier. Really respect and appreciate how you go about your job.